let's turn to Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. The press conference fallout this week. We were both there on Wednesday at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's set up to be another great occasion on November the 15th. I'm sure it'll sell out again. It's the fight of the year in Britain, in my view, the April 1st coming, if you like. They're calling it unfinished business on November the 15th. And the night was dominated at Spurs at the press conference by the effectiveness, the showmanship, and the downright skullduggery, if you like, of Chris Eubank and his attacks on the boxing border control, on Eddie Hearn, on his opponent. In fact, I'd like to say that Conor Benn got off lightly and wasn't called a drugs cheat this time, which didn't actually come up, did it? There was, I say, there were no eggs thrown, but there was plenty of stench in the room.
Yeah, there certainly was. I mean, Chris is that guy, isn't he? He's a master at what he does. He's a showman, he's a salesman, and that's exactly what he was doing there. I mean, he had so much else on his mind with talking about blaming the boxing board and the ambulances being stopped and Eddie Hearn and all the rest of it. It was, it was one of those. It was an unusual press conference because it was the first time the boxing fraternity had come together since the tragic loss of Ricky Hatton, and I think that it affected Conor Benn. We could see that it affected Conor Benn, who wore the Man City shirt to the press conference. He looked very emotional when he was at the press conference, and he talked about Ricky Hatton sort of
taking him under his wing when he first came here.
Absolutely,
training him,
coming over from Australia
when he was 15.
That's right,
exactly.
Teaming up with Ricky, and Ricky sort of like being a
mentor
to him. And I think that it definitely had an effect on Conor, so he was sort of like very reserved and he wasn't really biting too much at Chris Eubank Jr., but Chris was going off on one, man.
Well, the fallout from it, because it was genuinely an evening of fallout, was that Chris Eubank Jr. faces a fresh legal battle with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom after accusing them of delaying his ambulance's exit from Tottenham Hotspur when he was in a gurney following his victory over Conor Benn in April. Let me quote him here. He said, "They did everything they could to try and destroy me in this last fight. Contract breaches, fines, rehydration clauses. They sabotaged the weigh-in. There was biased commentary." That was probably you. And refereeing. The list goes on. We weren't biased at all. We both had Eubank winning comfortably. I'm in the ambulance and these scumbags, quoting Eubank again, blocked that ambulance from leaving the stadium for 20 minutes. We were locked in for 20 minutes. I'm lying there in a gurney with an oxygen mask on. The car cannot move because they won't open the gates to let us leave. Let me add to this. I'd like to get your reaction from Eddie Hearn. I've never seen him so incensed, if I'm honest. Mm-hmm. What was your reaction to Eddie Hearn? He was rattled, wasn't he?
He was rattled from when he walked in. I actually spoke to Eddie before the press conference went on, and Eddie said, look, I'm not going to get a word in. I know that. I know that Chris has come with a motive. He's not going to let me talk. Every time I talk, he's going to try and shut me down. That's what he done last time. But, it is what it is. I've got to be here. I am the promoter. But he did look rattled, actually, and I think he was upset. He was upset with Chris Eubank's behaviour, the accusations that he was throwing at Matchroom, at Eddie Hearn personally, about the ambulance being stopped and all of that stuff as well. And there was that moment, wasn't there, when Eddie wanted to say something about Ricky Hatton.
At the very beginning.
At the very beginning. And Chris Eubank just shut him down. He wouldn't let him speak.
And he suffered all the negative news headlines the next morning for that. And thereafter in the evening, because he was seen to be being disrespectul to Ricky Hatton at the time, wasn't he?
He was. And I think he released a statement actually saying, I wasn't being disrespectful. I had a lot of time for Ricky Hatton as a fighter, as a person. He was one of the greatest we've ever produced. He
qualified it. Yeah. But what he explained was he wasn't going to let Eddie Hearn speak, and it wasn't right. about. It wasn't. He almost wasn't listening to the content.
Yeah, no,
at the
that's
time.
Right.
His plan was just to shut Eddie Hearn down. Maybe, and we've talked about this off air, Eddie was calculating on that as well. There might have been a counter game going on here as well.
Listen, Eddie's a smart guy. Of course, look, I think that Eddie just wanted to say his piece on Ricky Hatton as the fighter, but it was all sort of, look, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I don't think that Chris Eubank wanted Eddie to speak, and he felt that was Eddie's way of trying to shut him down, and he wasn't going to allow it. We heard that Eddie, and that's what he done in the last press conference before, and he kept doing it.
And Eddie acquiesced that time. He didn't this time.
Absolutely.
He didn't yield.
Eddie was very emotional, and he said, listen, it was disrespectful, distasteful, and he should have let me speak. So it's like, you take it as it is. Was it Eddie, using that to speak? I don't think it was. I think he personally wanted to say his bit on Ricky Hatton, but I also, in defence of Eubank Jr., don't think that he was being distasteful or disrespectful to...
But it was disrespectful.
Yeah, exactly.
It came across.
No, but I'm saying, but I don't think it
wasn't
intentionally.
Deliberate. I agree with you.
That's what
I agree with you, but it did come across.
Yes.
But it wasn't just that. He went further. Obviously, he called the promoters scumbags at the last event in the build-up, and he issued an apology. As we understand, he was told to behind the scenes by HE, His Excellency, Turki Al-Sheikh, who was very unhappy with him critiquing and attacking the promoters. There was legal action threatened. Then, of course, by Frank Warren. It was a very aggressive press conference. In this one, there was a passive aggressiveness. We've got an interview with Chris Eubank coming up in the next section, very interestingly, with Rory Jennings and Adi Oladipo. It's kind of a lot of it around poker, but it just shows how Eubank thinks. Then there was an attack, to go into the detail on this, because it was a fascinating press conference. There was an attack on Robert Smith and the Boxing Board of Control. He paid $500,000 in fines, didn't make the weight. That was nothing to do with the Boxing Board of Control. It was in the contract. He missed it by a Cadbury's cream egg. He claims they sabotaged him coming to the weigh-in. Hearn and Matchroom claim that he turned up really late and left himself only 10 minutes to lose the weight. It's all drama anyway. And Robert Smith, I spoke to this week, was very unhappy with Eubank's comments. And this is what Robert Smith told us.
Obviously, I can't say too much about Chris Eubank, as we have taken legal advice. But it is disappointing that anybody would say that any member of the board or myself would do anything detrimental to a boxer's health. And to say that somebody deliberately stopped an ambulance from leaving a venue is quite unbelievable.
So that was Robert commenting on unhappy about the accusations of what the board may and might do with fines that they take. We know what they do. They put it into research, medical help, and as much as they can do. We've both known Robert a very long time, and he is very much a stand-up figure trying to oversee what we call the Wild West. And also, we've got one of the best safety records in the world. You know yourself that through cases like your own, through Michael Watson, the board went through terrible times, were sued themselves years ago, and they've come through, and there is always medical help on hand. It was chaotic leaving the arena that night, leaving the stadium. I can't imagine that anyone was deliberately stopping an ambulance from leaving, with Chris Eubank Jr. in it.
No, nor can I. I mean, I was parked not too far away from the stadium. It took me 2 hours to get out of there, just to move, 50 metres, if you like. So, look, the Boxing Board of Control are the most stringent board in the world, and I'm living proof that, they do listen, they do learn from the accident that happened to Michael Watson. Medical procedures improved, medical science improved, and they took that all on board, and that saved me, and that's why I'm sitting here today, because the Boxing Board acted. They sedated me in the ring, stopped any damage being done. I went and was operated on, 3-hour operation to the right side of my brain to stop a bleed, and that was down to the Boxing Board, acting the right way after the accident that happened to Michael Watson. So I can't knock the Boxing Board of Control. I think that they are there
in no way, shape or form will they ever try and hinder a boxer being saved if he's hurt in a fight.
Absolutely.
As he was chronically dehydrated. His health, I mean, they've talked about his health being in danger. Obviously it was because he went to hospital, but obviously we're very happy that Chris Eubank is fine. He won that first fight, by the way, 116-112 against Conor Benn. We both had it that way, I think, or at least 7-5. It was such an interesting press conference. We may come to this later in the show. We haven't even talked about how we feel the second fight might go. If we've got time later on in the show, we will. But we've got time in the next, 7 weeks, 8 weeks before the fight takes place. But it will be a fascinating fight when it does take place. Coming up next, we'll listen to Rory Jennings and Adi Oladipo talking a bit of poker for about 10 minutes with Chris Eubank, and we'll digress and assess what he said. Now, earlier this week, our colleague Rory Jennings and our colleague Adi Oladipo caught up with Chris Eubank Jr. himself.
Well, I was with him yesterday on my birthday for the first time in 6 years. We had a great day. He doesn't want me to fight. I don't think he wants me to fight in general, not just this particular rematch. I think he thinks that at 36 years old, I should be moving on to different things in this stage of my life. But that is a father worrying about his son. And, he doesn't see the things I'm doing on a day-to-day basis in the gym. I'm still capable. I'm still hungry. I'm still loving dedicating my life to the sport. So retirement is not in my eye line right now. He will be at the fight for this fight. And I would imagine that he will be, I don't know, he was publicly against me fighting in the last fight. I don't see that happening again for this fight.
Chris, it's funny, you mentioned your age, 36, which I think still quite young, considering two guys we saw on the weekend, near a 38-year-old and a 35-year-old in Crawford and Canelo, go wall-to-wall, toe-to-toe for 12 rounds. And as that fight played out, you came to my mind because I was thinking, surely Chris is thinking about either a Canelo fight, which we all want in the UK. Your name has always been mentioned with Canelo for the last few years, or maybe even a Crawford fight now, because I think he should be at 168 and Crawford's the guy at 168. Is there any play there? Obviously, look, we're here talking about Conor Benn, but surely those two guys must be on your radar.
For sure. I mean, these are the guys at the top of the tree. So after, a big win against Conor again, if the public, if the Saudis, if Turkey Al-Sheikh would see it that I was able to face one of these men in 2026, absolutely. I would love the opportunity to get into the ring with either one of those men and test my skills, test my strengths against the best.
Bomac is back now. I love Bomac. I think we all love Bomac. I actually think your performance against Liam Smith the second time around with Bomac in the corner was maybe the best performance of your career. How important is it that Bomac is back? And is it disappointing that there's no longer Jonathan Banks there, who is, again, a top trainer?
Jonathan Banks, an amazing coach, an amazing trainer, amazing person. It was just simply a fact of me and the team wanting a different approach to this fight the second time around. We don't want the fight going 12 rounds. So that means we have to, the best chance of that is to employ a different strategy, have different tactics, have a different mindset on what it is we need to do with Conor Benn in that ring. That's why we brought Bomac in. Me and Bomac are 1-0 when it comes to rematches. We're about to make it 2-0.
Chris, on the build-up to the previous fight, you were fairly dismissive about the threat that Conor Benn were to pose to you. You seemed to think that it was almost a write-off and you were very confident as you entered the ring. Post-fight, you were quite complimentary about Conor Benn. I think you openly said that he surprised you. He had the fight and the wherewithal that perhaps shocked you a touch. Going into this fight, are you still as confident as you were in that first fight, or did anything that happened in the fight shock you?
I'm extremely confident. Nothing shocked me, but I was surprised, or I wasn't expecting that he would have the grit and the determination that he did. I thought he would quit at the first sign of hardship, of things not going his way. And there was a lot of that in that fight for him, and he didn't give up, which so many fighters these days do. When they know they're not going to win, when they know they're hurt, when they know they're behind on the scorecards, they'll take a knee or they won't get up off the stool. He didn't do that. So in that respect, I give him his credit.
You've been there and done it, right? Various levels, world level, coming through, British level. Did you find anything out about yourself in those 12 rounds? Like, once you've sort of regrouped and recovered and watching the fight back, did you kind of say, okay, I found out a bit more about me, or did you know you had that anyway?
No, I'm 36 years old. I've been doing this for 22 years. There's nothing that Conor Benn can help me find out about myself that I didn't already know already. I've been in way harder fights. I've been in way harder situations in my life, and I know how to deal with them. I know what I do when I get into those spots. And you guys know too. You guys have seen me deal with the same types of hardships in similar fights over the years, where, it's 12-round wars. I am no stranger to that. I think the fight was more of a surprise for him. He was the one that found out new things about himself in that fight.
Chris, can I ask you what's different about the preparation for a rematch rather than fighting someone for the first time? Like, surely you know so much about each other already.
That's the difference. It's one of those things where, you shared 12 rounds with somebody, and you have the data, you've downloaded it all, you know the strengths, you know the weaknesses, you know the the limits of the man in front of you. So you have to then use all that information in preparation for round 2 or round 13, if you will. My experience in the game, I think that will benefit me. The fact that I've been doing this for so much longer than him, I know how to capitalize on the things I see and experience on a fighter more than he will. So yeah, I'm looking forward to an even more impressive performance next time around on November 15th.
This might sound like a silly question, but it's coming from me having never ever played poker up until about a month ago. And I've never ever got to a table and been so nervous in my life. Like, my hands were shaking and sweating. What's more nervous for you, sitting at a poker table with some big dogs, the big sharks, or making that ring walk?
You can't compare the two. One, your life is on the line. In the other, you have, and in boxing, you got one shot. You got one shot.
Yeah.
And if it goes wrong, you can never, you have to live with that for the rest of your life. Poker, there's always opportunities to make your money back or to readjust. You can buy back in if you want, if you will. You can't buy back into a fight. Once it's over, it's over. But yeah, I think that one of the great things about boxing is that it taught me to control my emotions. It taught me discipline. It taught me how to have a poker face. So when I'm hurt in that ring, when I'm hurt in these spars, my opponent will never see it. They will never know that they caught me with a good body shot. They will never know that I hit them with a shot and my knuckle is really sore and I don't want to throw that shot again. They won't know because of the poker face. And I transferred some of those skills over to the poker table. So when I got a huge hand, or I put in a huge bluff, the face stays the same. You will never know. You'll never know.
You will never know. Mr. Spencer Oliver, the apple has not fallen far from the tree with Eubank Sr. and Eubank Jr. This week we saw him passive and aggressive. We saw him feeling sorry for himself. We saw him play the victim, but he's also the beneficiary. He's a brilliant speaker. He's a great promoter. Who has the bigger ego, senior or junior?
That's a very tough question. A very tough question. I think that Junior is a great poker player, a poker face. You never know the emotions that are going on. He does carry that, and that does transcend into the boxing ring. But when it comes to being the bigger ego, I think it has to be the father.
Well, we'll take that up with Chris Eubank Sr. when we see him, no doubt, at some point in the build-up to the fight on November the 15th. He did a lot of prodding me in the chest, saying you should be going against this fight before turning up in April. No doubt he'll be prodding us both in the chest. Final word, 1 or 2 words. Looking forward to it?
Can't wait. I mean, if they deliver what they delivered last time, which I believe that they will, this one could even be better. We had a little bit of everything. I think that it goes down as one of the best British fights that I've seen in a British ring.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.